A big talking point in the entire gaming community right now is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. It is of course tremendous, however, unfortunately it's not available on the Nintendo Switch, currently only available on the PlayStation 4, and I doubt that the remake itself will ever come to the Switch, but who knows, we've seen some crazy stuff happen. With the long-awaited Final Fantasy VII Remake releasing to rave reviews, interest in the FF7 story is at an all-time high. Detailed by Game Rant, many fans know that the story extends beyond the original game with things like Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII and Dirge of Cerberus starring Vincent Valentine, a very underrated character from the original Final Fantasy VII, who was a side character that was so beloved, or I should say a secret character that was so beloved, ended up getting his own game, and while the game wasn't great, it was great to see Vincent's story fleshed out, but those games are only available on older platforms, and it's not very easy to access those games. However, if a recent rumor is to be believed, that could be changing in the very near future. A Reddit user going by the name of Squeenix Leaker 404 claims that something called Final Fantasy VII Legacy Collection is in the works for the Nintendo Switch. Apparently, this Legacy Collection will consist of Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus, and Before Crisis. The leaker didn't clarify if the original Final Fantasy VII would be included in the collection, but you would assume so, given the fact that that game is already available on the Nintendo Switch, but I don't know if they really want to conflict with themselves on offering the base Final Fantasy VII game while the remake is still a thing. I don't know, I don't think it makes that big of a difference because the remake is such an enhancement of the game that I don't think people will be swayed away from buying the remake because they have the original on the Nintendo Switch, but whatever, it's something to think about. Game Rant continues, while it's certainly possible that Square Enix plans on remastering Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus for modern consoles, fans should take this information with a big grain of salt, as there are a number of things that make it a little bit suspect. The biggest issue is that no other platforms besides the Switch are mentioned, which would be bizarre and a little bit inconsistent, although I could very well see it just coming to every platform. Another issue is that it seems highly unlikely that Before Crisis has a chance of getting a port. For the uninitiated, Before Crisis was an action RPG prequel to Final Fantasy VII that launched all the way back in 2004, but it was for Japanese mobile devices. Before Crisis had a multiplayer element to it as well, but the online servers were shut down in 2018 and it was never released outside of Japan, so it would be a little bit of an undertaking to get that game ready for a Western release. However, perhaps its story could be collected in a theoretical Final Fantasy VII Legacy Collection bundle, and Square Enix has done something very similarly with the Kingdom Hearts collections. They just offer you the story while not necessarily giving you the entire game of some of the more obscure titles. Final Fantasy VII interest is at an all-time high, and I think you should capitalize when the interest is so high. I think people do want to experience the other games. However, are you also of the mindset that this could offer people spoilers? I don't think that's the biggest deal in the world. Look, these games have been available for a long time, and if you do want to experience them, there are things like emulators on computers. You can dig up Dirge of Cerberus and Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII and play them relatively easily, and it goes without saying that Final Fantasy VII Remake is changing quite a bit from the base game. To avoid spoilers, it is seemingly a much different experience, however, retaining a lot of the fundamentals that made a lot of people enjoy Final Fantasy VII. Many will say, rather than experiencing a full-on remake, do expect something that's more of a reimagining. However, from a sales standpoint, even if you want to be of the mindset that this could spoil Final Fantasy VII, that this could offer content that would detract people from engaging with the FF7 remake story, which I think would be a little bit of a foolish thought, at the end of the day, it will sell very well, and Final Fantasy VII Remake is still going to sell incredibly well. Given that the time period we're living in is very uncertain, and the fact of the matter is the FF7 Remake has sold outstandingly well, I think Part 2 is going to do rather well, especially given that the reviews for Part 1 have been so strong, and a collection like this I think will do rather well as well. Hopefully we get more Final Fantasy titles being ported to the Nintendo Switch, especially games like Dissidia Final Fantasy. I've been waiting for that game to make a comeback. That has been relegated to the PSP. You can't really play it anymore unless you dig up your PlayStation Vita and buy the digital version. There's games like Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions, Final Fantasy Tactics A2, Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings. There are just a lot of Final Fantasy games that, yes, maybe not everyone is aware of them, but why not give people the opportunity to experience the games? Yes, some are better than others, but they all deserve a chance to be played, especially with interest in FF being as high as it is right now. And I think there would make a lot of sense in bringing Final Fantasy XIII to the Nintendo Switch as well. I know Final Fantasy XIII isn't everybody's cup of tea, but hey, that's more Final Fantasy on the Switch, and you can't complain about that. Final Fantasy Type 0 HD is another one that would be great on the Switch, and I can go on and on. There's a lot of Final Fantasy games, and everything that I mentioned was just off the top of my head. So that's gonna conclude this video. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. If you have a request for a future video, you can leave that in the comments as well, and we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.